Hi, I'm Sheetal Sheth, and you're watching Anokhi Uncensored.
Hope you're having a great day, guys. While we wait for my fabulous. Here she is! Woo! So,
Hi!
hi, sweetheart. How are you?
I'm great. It's so nice to see you. It's always nice to see, first of all, obviously, an old friend who I love so much. And also during this time, it means so much more because we're not seeing anybody.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. So, I'm going to now just go ahead and do the formal introduction. This lady does not need a formal introduction, but she's getting one because she deserves one. So, welcome to our special presentation of Anokhi Uncensored Live, where I'm your host, Girn, the CEO of Anokhi Life. I'm coming to you today in a special conversation with my dear friend, who you've already just heard from, actress, producer, author, and activist, Sheetal Sheth, where we will be talking about her new children's book, Bravo Anjali. But before we get into this, I want to share a little bit about Sheetal, just so that you understand why this particular children's book series is so important to her and kind of, is kind of a part of a bigger mission, in terms of what she's all about. So she starred in over 20 feature films and many TV shows throughout her last 20 years history in the film business and has earned a really loyal international following. Sheetal has become a favorite in the independent film world, having won 5 Best Actress awards on the festival circuit, and that too, despite being told that she'd have to change her name in order to work in Hollywood. And that's a whole part of the conversation that we're going to be getting into shortly. Clearly, she never did that and became an advocate for BIPOC women, speaking widely at events, panels, conferences, and continuing to work in the film business during that process as well. So proof is in the pudding. If you believe in who you are and what your identity is, there is no stopping you being, a part of the wider world that you want to be a part of, even though there's challenges along that road. And Sheetal is definitely going to talk a little bit about that with us. She is known as an outspoken advocate and has had op-eds published on CNN, The Daily Beast, and Thrive Global, but to name a few. She has also served in President Clinton's AmeriCorps and Big Brothers Big Sisters, and is currently on the advisory board of Equality Now and is an ambassador for CA First partner Jennifer Newsom's The Representation Project. That was a mouthful, but I got it out. Her extensive background in working with kids, as well as being a mother to 2 girls, led her into the world of children's literature, where her first authored children's book, Always Anjali, was published in 2018 to wide acclaim. And by the way, for those of you guys who follow us from the events perspective, it was also officially launched in Toronto at one of our events, which was really incredible. I mean, you had such a great outpouring of support here in Toronto from everyone. It's definitely a book that everybody wanted. And clearly, I mean, in 2019, you got the Purple Dragonfly Storybook Grant Award, which is voted by teachers and librarians. So that's another level of support that you've gotten as well, and is really set to be a series with a follow-up, Bravo Anjali, which is releasing in early 2021. This will be, folks, the first ever illustrated book series with a South Asian hero, and I'm so super psyched that I'm getting an hour to chat with my girl, Sheetal Sheth, about what all this is about and why you guys need to get on the bandwagon for this. Welcome, welcome, welcome officially, my darling, fierce and fabulous Sheetal Sheth.
Thank you. Thank you for all of that.
Yes.
I'm tired listening to it, and I know it's a mouthful. So thank you for doing what you do so beautifully. And I remember Toronto. I remember we had our soft launch there, and I was overcome. And I think partly that's you, Raj, because you bring together such a special community, and your energy and your kind of grace of it all really allows for the conversations that we have. And yes, there was so much. I mean, we sold out of books. I mean, it was
Yes.
amazing, unbelievable. A lot of the people that I met there are still connected to me and are reaching out, still love the book, can't wait for this. And we talk about so many other things as well, but it was just nice. You bring together really good people.
Oh, thank you, sweetheart. I really appreciate you. And you know that I've been, an advocate of yours since the get-go. You've been in some of the most pioneering films in American, independent films back from the early, 1990s onwards. Like, you really kind of broke a lot of glass ceilings that people maybe weren't quite ready for them to see such films, but there were ones that have allowed us to now get to where we are today in our journey as a community. And in terms of really people understanding who we are, because there's always been that idea of what people think when they think of the South Asian community, but they don't really necessarily understand who we are from a very diasporic perspective, and that there are so many other elements that make up who we are outside of some of the cliches that they've, thought that we are. And you have been one of those few people along that journey to really kind of create awareness for the diversity within the diversity.
Right. That's the danger of the single story that we talk about,
Yes.
And by the way, I think partly why you have seen so many of the same narratives for so long is that so many of, quote, mainstream media is done with white people in charge.
Yes.
To be very frank. And so if we're not able to tell our own stories, or that the stories that we do end up telling that we make our own are not getting the same opportunities and access as all the rest, then that's where you get the divide.
Absolutely. And where I want to start this conversation with you, Sheetal, is at a point where I feel it's important for people to understand some of why your children's series is so important today. So I want to take people back to the fact that you really held on to your name. When you were coming into the industry, Hollywood specifically, there was a lot of backlash that you got from holding your name. A lot of people from many cultures who weren't, quote unquote, from the white communities changed their names and continue to change their name for the same reason, to be able to get work in Hollywood. Can we start our discussion there? Because I feel it will beautifully, set the scene for why your first book was so important to get out.
Sure. Well, I don't think I think it's so telling and relevant more than ever right now, always Anjali, because what Anjali goes through in that book, it is exactly what happened with Senator Perdue and now Vice President-elect Kamala Harris. And I cannot tell you when that moment happened where he purposefully mispronounced her name.
Yeah.
How many people were like, oh my God, this is always Anjali. Yes, so much so that, anybody that I knew, people involved with the campaign, it became a talking point, and that this is not new. We all understand, we know what that is. We know what he's doing with that. Mm-hmm. And when adults are still doing it, what kind of example are we setting for our kids? And then how do our kids feel? Because they don't feel seen, or that their name matters. The very first thing you learn about someone sometimes, that matters. Get it right.
Yes. It's really interesting that you say that, because there was uproar when he insultedly said what he did and pronounced her name incorrectly. I mean, there was a time, and you know this, Sheetal, just as I do, when a person could get away with that.
Right.
Which is really shows that, times are changing, not enough, not fast enough, right? But there's a curve, there's a transition starting to take place. And we'll talk a little bit further about that. But now that we're touching on your first book, let's talk a little bit about why you decided to launch that. Always Anjali, folks, for those of you who aren't familiar with it.
I'll hold it up for you.
Yes, there it is. So it's called Always Anjali. And there's a specific reason why it was called that, and how it translates over into your personal experience with your name, and the experience that we all have from any culture that doesn't have a, Saxon name, for want of a better way.
Well, it's really, I mean, it's also kind of the broader message, which is something I talk to about with all kids, is feeling like you need to change any part of yourself to, quote, fit in. And that is really, you know, for Anjali, the entry point is her name, and that's the story that we talk about here. But it's really the larger message is you shouldn't have to change any part of yourself, whatever it may be, your name, your hair color, your sexuality, your family, whatever it is, you are fine exactly the way you are. And you don't need to change any part of that to be, quote, accepted.
Absolutely. So let's tell people a little bit about that first book, because I know that it's still available, and I would like to kind of, you know, just put that in there before we get into your second book.
Yes. So Always Anjali is the story of this 7-year-old girl. It's her birthday in the beginning of the book, and she's so excited to be getting a bike finally of her own. And so when her and her friends are riding her bike to the school carnival, they all want to get matching license plates for their bikes. And her friends find their names immediately. She does not. And is really like, it's almost like the first time she realized that, why isn't my name there? And she felt, and in that moment, she gets teased and bullied on top of that. And then she goes home, and and also the kind of guy at the booth throws her a license plate that says Angela instead of Anjali. And how many times have we all been like, oh, is that fine? You know, thinking it's okay. It's not the name. And so she goes home and she tells her parents that she is going to change her name. And they're, of course, not happy about that and say why. And she's upset, and she goes to her room, she's crying. And then her mom tells her where her name comes from, what it means, why she was named that way. You're not sure if Anjali kind of gets it, but she wakes up in the middle of the night, you can tell something changed. And you see her working on something. And then when she goes to school, it's funny, her two friends who were with her so sweetly, and I did this on purpose because I wanted to show female friendship in particular.
Right.
And so her two friends had made her a license plate just like theirs, but Anjali had made one for herself. And it was not like anybody else's. And as lovely as it was that her friends did that, that's the sentiment that you want. She was like, you know what? And the whole class was like, wait, we like that one because nobody else has something like that. And actually being exactly the same and having the same thing is not great.
You're right.
And then she finally gets the confidence when later she runs into that same person who's bullying her to stand up to him and say what puts him in his place, rides off on his bike, you know, kind of like, peace out.
Yes.
And the last sentence is she knows that, you know, that she'll never be one of the crowd, and that she vowed to always be Anjali because she knows there's greatness in not being one of the crowd. So
absolutely,
that's the book.
So let's talk.
And it's you know, it's done. It's doing very well. I'm so grateful for it. It's available with everything that's happened. You know, it's become a centerpiece in so many schools' conversations about racism, about bullying, about women, about friendship. It has so many layers to it. So it's found this amazing audience, and it's great for your holiday presents. So anyway, you can check it out. It's available.
Absolutely. So where can people go purchase it if they want to purchase it online? Because now we're getting ready for the holiday season, right?
Yes, just go to alwaysanjali.com and you'll see all the links where you can support the indie booksellers and so forth.
Well, I mean, I can attest, having followed your journey, and you know, especially in the last couple of years since you launched the book, Sheetal, there isn't a week that goes by where you haven't been somewhere. I mean, this is pre-quarantine, of course, where you haven't been somewhere with the book and a whole audience of young children. So I want to ask you, for those couple of years that you've been kind of out on the road, just getting the message out there, what has been the feedback that you've gotten from the kids?
Well, I mean, I love how honest kids are. We have such great conversations. And what I saw and I knew this innately, but I saw it firsthand now, is that kids want to have these conversations, and they are not too young. There is nothing that we cannot talk to our kids about, obviously put in the right context with the appropriate language. But they want to they're dealing with it. I mean, I say to people when they say, don't you think this is a little tough? I'm like, really? Kids are being gunned down in their schools. You're having them doing shooter drills. There's bulletproof backpacks, and they can't talk about racism. Give me a break, you know, come on. And so for me, it's very much, and I have a lot of other books, you know, in the works, and they all have a layer of something that I would love being able to talk to kids about, and obviously an entertaining, fun, non-didactic way, but it's an entry point into conversations that I think we need to be having with our kids. They're never too young, and it's the only, I think we've seen what happens by several adults that are poorly behaved, who obviously don't know how to deal with the world in the way it works. And we're not going to change that unless we start with our youngest.
Right. Oh, that's so interesting, because that was actually going to be my next question. I'm going to ask it to you anyway, in case you want to add anything further to it. How do you feel that exposing our girls and boys from a young age is going to have an impact to be heard and represented in the future, when in juxtaposition, Sheetal, we didn't have that? Like, the fight for us has been horrendous to kind of figure out who we are as an identity, bearing in mind that a part of who we are comes from our heritage, and a part of who we are is where we live today, and the future that we're creating with both of those. Like, talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I hope that each generation that comes after us grows. You don't want to be hopefully having the same stagnant fights, although sometimes it feels like we're going backwards when you look at the political climate.
Right.
But we are moving forward slowly but surely. And so there are things that I feel like are really important to say, because it's something that I've encountered a lot through my journey. And that is that there is no such thing as a girl book or a boy book. And it is so important to expose to both genders, of the opposite genders' lives. And when Vice President-elect Kamala Harris won, everyone was talking about how important that was for women. I was saying, this is amazing for boys to see.
Right.
It's actually even more important for boys to see women in charge and in powerful positions, because that is where you'll make change. And so that is one thing that I find to be a big kind of weird thing that somehow has been conditioned in people. So they're like, I'm not going to buy a book for my daughter that has a boy on the cover, or I'm not going to buy a book for my son that has a girl on the cover.
They're missing the point.
They're missing the point. And it's just as important to have people of color and the world represented at large in your books. And that is something that we can do early. And that's as simple as making the effort to buy, even as a baby, board books that have people that look like the world. You have to go and make sure you're buying those. Otherwise, you'll end up with a shelf of either a bunch of books about, Caucasian kids or animals, because there are still more books about animals in kids lit than there are kids of color.
Right.
And
absolutely.
so, and you have to really think about it. It's not even on purpose, but I think you have to really train yourself to be aware of that, and specifically pick out those things so that you are surrounding your child so that they don't think that that's not normal. They have to realize that these people are not othered. They are actually part of mainstream life. And you can do that by exposing them to the world through books and media.
Absolutely. And what's really interesting is this kind of brings to my mind some research that I've been seeing that they've been kind of circulating on social media, where they've had, little girls of color, little boys of color, where they've been given like dolls and other entities. You've probably seen them as well,
yes.
Right? Where they've been asked to identify what they're seeing and how they perceive themselves, in conjunction with that. What are your thoughts on that? Because that also plays into this bigger picture of, do I feel worthy if I do not look or act a certain way? And I feel that that is a larger message that is a part of this book series that you're doing as well.
Yes, I mean, look, it starts at home, kids are taught, they're sponges. So they're being taught everything that's coming out of their mouth. And I heard so many stories from parents, because they love this book so much. And they were telling me I heard one story from one parent telling me that their daughter, who was 4 years old, was told by a classmate and she was a girl of color, saying, that brown kids belong in jail, right? This is when she was 4 years old. Mm-hmm. Those things don't come from kids. They come from something that they've heard at home. That happens at the dinner table. Mm-hmm. So there are so many things like that we as parents need to be really conscious of in terms of even what I realized that in my country, we had a president that it was really difficult to turn on the news, because he was not an example that you would want to set for our children. But in general, we need to really be careful about what we're saying and what we're thinking, because kids pick it up and they're like parrots, and they won't even really understand what they're saying, but they're saying it, and words matter.
Oh, words matter. Absolutely. I'm curious, how do your daughters feel about, your books and and Mama being an author of, you could have written any type of book. I mean, in your position, you could have done an adult book on feminism. You could have done anything,
Right.
right? But you chose to do children's books. So I guess this is a two-part question that's coming to me right now. One is, what do your daughters think of mummy doing this? And secondly, why did you choose to advocate children's books?
So I have worked with kids my whole life. Literally since I was a child. I've just been really involved. My family very much believes in service and being part of the community. And my
Right.
parents were one of the founding families to kind of bring together the South Asian community from where they lived, because we grew up in Pennsylvania and there was very little. And so they, fundraised, broke ground, built an inclusive temple that allows anybody to come of all religions, which is really in itself, quite ahead of its time back
Right.
in the 80s that was happening.
Right.
And so being around that with my parents my whole life is just something that you just are, and so, and for me, I've always loved kids. I was choreographing dances for kids, when I was a teenager. I was working in community programs, I was volunteering, there was always something I was doing, and I just have always connected to kids easier, probably easier than I do with adults. There is an
That's because
honesty.
of the honesty, right?
Yes,
And the
it's the
transparency.
honesty,
Yeah.
and the purity and
Right.
the honesty and the innocence and the I just love it so much. I love having conversations with kids. And so for me, it was a very natural, organic thing. I mean, I tell stories. I like to tell stories, obviously, as an actress and a producer. And so this is just another way of telling stories in just this medium. And
Right.
I also, it came from me being pregnant with my first and realizing that we had as much problems with representation in publishing as we do in the entertainment industry. But my kids now, they're older now. I feel very lucky because I feel like I'm in a focus group daily with them, because I can just and they're as honest as they come. And in fact, my oldest, Ember, I'm working on a chapter book series right now, and I read it to her, and she had very choice words for me because she didn't like the parts of it. And you take it to heart, and it's really fun to be able to read. These books are meant to be read out loud with your children, whether they're reading it or you're reading it, and that's what they're meant for. And so I think being an actor, that really helps me write, because I like practicing. I like, as I'm going through the process, doing that with my words, because you have less words, but they need to matter more. And they also can't be they have to really get the message across in a way that kids can access it. So I love that I'm able to kind of test it out on my kids and their friends pre-COVID. I feel like I'm in a sweet spot right now in terms of them, and they love it. They love kind of hearing my stories, and they love when back before we had COVID and they would come to my events with me, they loved being in charge of giving away the swag.
Of course.
Helping people sign, and they were they're very, very strict, one per person. I was like, you can give more. They were
so
giving away, I was like, you can give people stickers and pins, and they're like, one's enough.
I love it.
Funny.
So let me ask you something.
Very sweet.
Absolutely. Before we get into actually talking about book number 2, which is Bravo Anjali, for anyone out there who's just joining us, I am in conversation with the fabulous Sheetal Sheth, who is getting ready to launch her second book in a series. We're going to be talking about that shortly. It's Bravo Anjali. The first one was Always Anjali, and you can still get that. And let's share the website again, Sheetal. What's the website?
alwaysanjali.com. I mean, it's available a lot of places, but if you go to Always Anjali, there'll be links that specifically support independent sellers.
Perfect, which is what we want.
Yes.
So I want to ask you, before we move into this second book, which I'm excited about, can you tell us what the process is like? Because I know that you also write, right? What's the process like for you to write a book for children? I mean, that's got to be difficult.
Well, I read a lot of children's books, and that, when I first had the idea about this, I made a point. I spent, I was pregnant, so I had some time, I wasn't working as much as an actress. And so I spent every free hour in a bookstore just reading. And I read everything. I read all different, I wasn't sure even children's books have so many different categories of things. There's board books, there's picture books, there's early readers, there's chapter. I mean, there's so many things. And I was like, really just trying to figure out where my voice best lay.
Right.
And so I read as much as I could. I also wanted to see what was out there because I didn't feel like I needed to do something that was already done. And so in that process, I just started writing. I mean, the first book took me probably about a year to get to a place where I was then comfortable sharing it with business people, in the sense where I was like, okay, this is at a place where maybe I'm going to show it to someone and see what they think. And that took a good year to really get it's hard. Children's books are really hard, like I said, because it's less words, but they need to mean more and do more with each word. And also those words matter.
Right.
And they have to allow for, especially my category of illustrated books, they need to allow for moments and illustration to really come to life. And you have to think about that when you're writing. And they need to have a rhythm to it. So it's hard. I've gotten better at it, like anything. With the more practice you have, the better you're going to get. I do find it's still hard, but it doesn't take me as long. Like the first book took me a long time, but I've written other books in a shorter period of time. I think I've figured out kind of what I need. And I also, I dream a lot. And when I get a lot of my ideas and dreams, and I just keep a notepad right next to me because I'll often wake up in the middle of the night. I'm like, oh my God, that's it. And I'll write it down.
That's totally me. I'm the same person.
And then you'll come back to it and explore it. But it's the shower and dreams is where I get my ideas.
Oh my God, I can't believe it. I think we were sisters in a past life, because that's exactly the same thing happens to me. Because it's the moments when you're actually really, truly in solitary confinement with your own mind. Right. Absolutely.
Yes. And you're relaxed
as well.
Yes.
Absolutely.
You're not pushing for it.
It's interesting. And you're saying how long it took for the first one to come out versus, subsequent books thereafter, because you and I talked about this book probably 2 years before it even was put out there.
Oh yes, we did.
Remember, I came to New York and we had lunch and you talked to me about it.
Yeah.
I remember that. So let's get into the second book. I'm so excited. So the second book is called Bravo, Anjali.
Hold it up for you. This is the cover. So beautiful.
Oh my God, I love it. Love it.
I love this cover.
Which officially makes this the first illustrated children's series with a South Asian hero. Oh my God.
Can you even believe that's true?
I can't believe that's true.
When someone said that to me, I go, let's check, because that seems insane. Let's not say that. Obviously, let's make sure we say that, like that has accuracy.
Right.
And it's true. I mean, it's shocking to me.
Even India?
Well, I don't know about India.
So we're talking in the diaspora.
North America, yes. In North America, yes. There's probably I don't know about the Indian market, but I'm talking about here.
Yeah, and this is relevant obviously for us here because it's the story of a girl who we can identify as having kind of both sides of her identity, being South Asian, but also being a South Asian that lives in North America, right? So
and that was important to me. I really, really, really been there, done that with the narratives of, generational kind of stories where there's what I would often see. It's gotten better, but originally you would just see when you saw a South Asian person, it had to do with holidays, religion, arranged marriage, mythology. These are the things that keep, and there's so much of it everywhere. And so I really, really, really was wanting to present a narrative of the family next door, like a sitcom. Like that would be, this is a family there. It's not even first generation. We have moved forward from them. Her parents are like I am, like Anjali is like my children. We have moved forward from that narrative. And I really wanted to normalize that and make people realize that, by the way, we exist and we wash our hands and people have pets and we do simple things too. Not everything has to be. Because everything sometimes becomes very heavy and around an extraordinary event to justify that person of color being in the story. Right. And I heard someone say this, I can't remember who, but it was someone who was, a BIPOC creator. And they said, when you watch a lot of things, they spend so much time. You see white people wash their hands. You see them doing dishes. You see them walking their dogs. You don't see that in so many narratives when it comes to people of color because they don't have time for that. There's heavy stuff to get to. And I'm like, well, what if it's not? What if there's a way way to have both, you know,
Right.
and there's a way to have layers and actually show us to be multifaceted, and also, you know, someone who just wants to have a barbecue sometimes too.
Yeah, and I think that's important, because in order to show normalcy, you have to show those other bits, and not just always kind of the big traumatic experience that, you know, the community may collectively be going through. Like, what about the normal stuff? Because we do all of it.
Yes. Well, otherwise we become othered, right? We're like, oh, those are the people who celebrate Diwali. Those are the people who celebrate Ramadan. And we do, but that's not all we do.
Right. We do all of what you do too.
Yes.
Where
Yes.
we may be living in
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
So talk to me about this book. What's it about? What are you allowed to tell us?
I can tell you. So, you know, I had always planned on this being a series. And so I'll give you a little insight of the plan of it, which some people have figured out and some haven't. And I'm just going to tell you, so whoever knows will know.
Yes.
At the end of each book, there is an Easter egg. So if you remember, at the end of Always Anjali, there is a picture of Anjali playing the tabla.
Yes.
That is there by design. So each book will always have a little like Easter egg about what's to come. Also, I have thought, as I'm thinking, I don't know if I'll get to Z, but each book will have the A.
You'll get to Z. I already know you.
But so like the first one is the A. Anjali is always going to stay, but the word around it, so it's always Anjali. Then we're at B. Bravo Anjali. The third book, which is already done, has a C with it. So that's by design.
I love it.
Yes. And so this book, very much when I was thinking about it, when I was writing it, we were in the middle of the Me Too movement. And everything going on with Hillary and Trump was weighing on me. And I kept thinking about something I think about a lot, is how sad I am at the amount of people, particularly women, who have had to not been able to live up to their fullest potential, or live every opportunity that they should, because people are uncomfortable, because of sexism, whatever it may be, and they've felt, and they haven't shown the way that they wanted to. They haven't been space created for them.
Right.
And so when I was thinking about Anjali for the second book, you know, I knew I wanted to bring the tabla into it. I was like, you know, the tabla is a predominantly boy instrument, in the sense that you don't see as many females playing it. Right. Because I remember how many people were like, what a cool image to see like this girl playing tabla. And I was like, is that unusual? And I was like, I realized actually it is. And so I thought, I wonder if the story can be about that, and find a way to deal with those kind of things, and making people feel like they never have to dim their light. And so that is that, you know, like in the first book, when the sentence that like comes out is to be different is to be marvelous. In this book, it's never dim your light. And so what happens in this book is you see her in her tabla class, and she is the only girl, and she's the best, and the boys don't like it. And they give her a hard time for it. And she doesn't like the kind of negative attention that they're giving her. They leave her out of practice sessions. They don't invite her to things. They're putting her on the spot. And this happens. You know, these are the ways that people deal with things. And so she starts messing up on purpose, because she just doesn't, she's like, okay, you know, whatever. She's pretending she's not as good as she is.
Right.
And so you see, there's all these little things that happen, and there's all these little tidbits in the book that I knew two female tabla players that I knew loosely, who I've now named characters after in the book, because they gave me such insight. I was like, tell me stories of what it was like. And there's a few instances that are, again, right in the book from stories that they've had. So that's just a sidebar.
The only one I know is Tina Sugand. Remember Tina Sugand?
Yes, she's one of them. She's one of them. Yes, she's my friend and was such a great resource.
She was a rock star. She was
awesome. A rock star.
Remember
amazing.
That? Yeah.
Amazing. And then there's Hina Patel, who runs Mela Arts. So both of them, those are my friends, and their characters, Hina and Tina, in the book because of them.
Oh my God, I love that.
They helped me so much. And so anyway, and then her teacher, her guru, announces a recital, and the person who wins is going to be able to play with him, which is a huge thrill, and it's something she's dreamt of her whole life. And so she is perplexed. She doesn't know what to do, because she's worried she's going to lose all of her friends. And she goes to school, and her friend Deepak, who's one of the boys in the class. You see her, he causes up troubles with her friends. There's little things that happen. I don't want to give away too much of the book, but she has a complete meltdown, and then she comes to terms and realizes that she should never not be great at something, because someone makes her feel bad about it. Yeah, she says, like, she knows she's not going to let anyone make her feel bad because she's good at something. And so,
what an important message, Sheetal. That's such an important message. You know, we've all gone through it. We've all gone through it, where we've kind of, we have dimmed our light, you know, because we want to fit in. And I just feel fitting in is so overrated. Right? It's so, in a world that, you know, screams the need for individuality, because individuality is what's going to lend to raising up the collective to a higher level. Like, you need that.
Yes. And, you know, I made a point, you know, in the book, when we get to the kind of end of it, Deepak, her friend, who was kind of the ringleader, who was her, like, one of her great friends, and that was for her. She was like, I thought we were friends, you know, like, why? I don't understand. It really hurt her. I didn't let him off the hook. And they have an important kid conversation at the end that I really hope helps have conversations with our boys and our girls, and, you know, on both sides, about what this really means for each of us. Because it's not just women, but I think particularly women, this happens to more. But also, like, how can we be allies to each other in these moments? And so I didn't shy away from a kid conversation that they have at the end, and Anjali doesn't let him off the hook. And I'm really proud of that in the book as well.
So the book's kind of added in a couple of additional layers for people to think about when they're talking about this book, when they're sharing what some of the story means with their children, right? Like, it's really about, interesting. You've done that.
That's what I hope with every book. Like, of course, it's a beautiful book. The illustrator's amazing, Lucia Soto. She's fabulous. It's beautiful and stunning, and I'll tell you, the kind of music dance community is thrilled. They're like, I've heard from so many people be like, oh my God, tabla, classical music. Like, they're thrilled, you know, and
because you could have done anything, but what you did
I could have done anything. Yes. I wanted to bring, you know, again, things that we don't see in books.
Right.
And so, you know, it's really fun to have a musical element as a part of it, but it's really about anybody, whatever it is that they want to do, own it.
Right.
Don't shy away from being great. Be great. Do you.
Amen.
And that's what the book is about.
Absolutely. So how can people get this book? Because now I know that about it.
So the book is available for pre-order right now. You can go, again, if you go to alwaysanjali.com, there's a link for this as well on there. And it'll be out sometime next year. There's a lot of uncertainty because of COVID.
Of course.
And this year, like all industries, publishing was hit really, really hard.
Yeah.
And so there's just no way of 100% knowing. I mean, right now it says expected delivery September 2021, but that has a lot of cushion in there because we just don't know, you know? So that will be the very latest you get it, I hope.
Okay.
But
so irrespective of that, they should just pre-order.
You should pre-order it because there's a lot of fun swag that you can get with it if you pre-order early.
Talk about that.
So pre-order numbers matter in the book industry. So just like people track what happens when the book comes out, the people track pre-orders. So it's just good for the book if people pre-order it, number one. And number two, you get a lot of great swag. So up until we're on Saturday, this Monday, which will be the 23rd, if you order it before then, you get pins, stickers, a signed book plate. So you'll get a signed book, essentially. Yeah, by me.
Oh, okay, guys.
So if you order it by Monday, you will get that. And then I think there's a few more weeks of like other tiered, you'll get other things. But like, if you want the most stuff, you got to order it by Monday.
Okay, brilliant. So like, is there an extension on that where I'm getting a book signed by you since
for you, don't worry. That's not an issue.
Oh, baby doll. You just excite me and please me all the time. This is just so super fabulous. I want to ask you the future of the series. Are you thinking other than book. So you're thinking about any other dynamics that could be added to it? I'm just kind of, I'm putting it out there because you know me, I'm a creative,
Yes.
you know, person. I'm thinking almost even about some sort of a kids conference kind of scenario where you bring in other authors that are from multiple different cultures coming together and just, you know, really elevating and amplifying the message that you're putting out there in this series.
I love
me.
that idea. Yeah, no, I love that idea. By the way, I will remember that. That's a good one.
Yes.
Yes. I mean, all of the above. There's some really great stuff that I'm not allowed to talk about that I think will be like, it's just, I'm so excited that I get to do something. And when I can announce it, I will, but it's really tremendous, really excited. But the third book, I've already written and will be out the year after next. So that's all in the works and in the pipeline. And Lucia, this amazing illustrator, will be doing the illustrations of that as well. We both signed a deal for both books, which is great. And there'll be much more. I mean, I have other books that I've written that are not the Anjali series, but other books that will also be coming out.
Can we talk about any of that?
Not quite yet. Okay. Not quite yet.
So you'll come back on. You'll come back on.
Yes. I have other books with other publishers. There's other things happening across the board. But all really good. You know, I'm a creative, and a lot of this, you know, especially during COVID and when you're feeling like you can't do what you normally do, it was a great outlet for me. And I probably have been more productive than ever since, you know, my diagnosis when I was struggling with cancer to now. It's like when you're faced with your own mortality, you have a lot you want to get done in a completely, I mean, I've always been productive, but it's like pushed me to another place.
Absolutely. And by the way, I think you look really sexy with short hair.
Oh, thank you.
Do people say that? Do people say that to you?
I think
I've always known you.
I haven't really seen anyone.
Yeah. Okay.
I haven't really seen anyone, but yes, people like short hair suits you.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if that's a compliment or that's like their way of saying it, but I'm finding like, it's funny that you talk about the long hair. I realized that I used that as, safety for a really long time. And it really made me, you know, when you lose all your hair, you know, your vanity and all that's associated with your hair, especially Indian hair.
Yes.
And for someone like me who had actually done hair campaigns, like my hair was something I really, you know, took really great pride in.
Right.
It has allowed for me to really look at myself and that part of myself in a different way. And honestly, it's been really fun kind of playing with all the different stages of it. You know, I was like the short Halle Berry style for a while, and now it's gotten longer. I finally just got a bit of a trim shape because I find that short hair is actually much harder to deal with than long, because you can't just like roll out of bed.
Yeah, it's always,
you have to
gonna look good. Yeah.
Yeah, you can't. When I wake up, it's like madness. It's like things everywhere. Whereas with my long hair, it's like no big deal. You can throw it back and it's fine.
Absolutely.
So for short hair, you really need a shape. You need to like do things. I was in the beginning borrowing my husband's gel because
of course
it's curly now. I didn't have curly hair and he does. And I was like, I don't know what to do with this hair. And so I was like using his products. I feel like I'm like finding my way through it. So thank you for saying that.
Of course, sweetheart. It does. It makes your eyes pop even more than they normally pop, and they normally pop a lot. So
well, thanks.
That's just me sharing it with you, sister. So I want to ask you something. The future of representation, because I know that we're coming close to the end and I can talk to you forever. I want to kind of bring it back around full circle. So the future of representation, Sheetal, especially since the masses are far more aligned with what words like diversity, inclusion, and representation means today. What are your thoughts on that? Like, moving forward now, like, there's this wave going on, the political situation in America is now going in a direction that, hopefully we can get back on to serious topics that matter to us as humanity, right? So what are your thoughts on that? Because I almost feel like, and maybe it's just me, but I have to share this with you. I feel like during those number of years when, your political environment was what it was, a lot was lost in translation in some of the things that matter to move us forward as, the human race, things like diversity and inclusion and representation. We got more aggressive with our campaigns, you know, the Black Lives Matter, and,
Yes.
you know, how are we as South Asians showing up for our, you know, Black brothers and sisters, you know,
Yes.
and, you know, what does it mean to be white? And are we allowed to still be proud of our white privilege and on what all that means? You know, what are your thoughts on this? Like, do you, like, now with the next 4 years coming down the pike, and, you know, America is a country that people really do look at as a center force of watching the journey of humanity unfold, because there is so much more quote unquote freedom allowed in America, so or we think there is. So what are your thoughts around all of that? Do you feel that maybe we'll get back on the bandwagon of being more healthy with moving us forward as a human race, or do you feel that we're going to stay in this kind of aggressive state that we've been in because of the last 4 years in America?
Well, I really, really hope that we can get to a place where we can have real conversations that are nuanced. I feel like it was so much chaos, you know, for 4 years, and utter lawlessness and disregard to specific people, that I think that will hopefully be somewhat restored. But I don't think we can ignore the fact that a huge part of our country has been fed a myth about the other. And when you hear people talk about it, you know, because I want to hear why and what, again, social media and the disinformation that's out there, and the fact that we're allowed to propagandize and weaponize and politicize things that should not be. We have major problems, but I am so relieved that that guy will be gone. I mean, I don't think that the truth is he's never going to be gone from our, like, he's going to be around, and that voice will be around. So we just have to be louder, stronger, better than that. And how does that happen? It's by being really uncomfortable with ourselves and thinking about how we can all do better ourselves. And none of us are perfect. We've all had moments where we could have handled better and done better with. I think somebody during the height of the BLM movement, when it kind of had its a resurrection, sadly, because of what was happening, said, thank you for posting, you know, a picture about supporting BLM. Now show me a picture of your boardroom. And that is really, yes. And that she hit it right on the head. You know, if you really want to make a difference, look at who are in these positions, look at who you're hiring, look at who are making the decisions. Until we have structural change, we're not going to be able to make the leaps that we want. And I think we're getting there, and I think we're doing everything we need to do. I hope. I am cautiously hopeful with this new administration coming around, but we can't really sit around and wait for them to solve our problems. We need to just think about our own circle and our communities, and think of it again as communities where we hold each other's hands, and there's a collective, and we do, you know, love thy neighbor, hold their hands and figure out what is good. It's like this mask debate. Like, what are you talking? Like, how are we debating this? Take care of each other. Wear a mask. Do it for your fellow person. Do it for the safety of the public. You know, these are things that I think we can get back to, I hope. But we can individually do better every day. And so I think we just have to kind of be aware and think about it, you know, with our actions, with our words, with our communities, with if we're in the position of hiring and uplifting, which is why I make such a big point about, you know, supporting independent businesses, supporting small business. You did the kind of South Asian small business over Diwali. All of that matters. Uplift and champion. We all can do that.
Absolutely. So I want to ask you another question based off of what you just said there, Sheetal. You know, these words that, you know, we put out there in pop culture, like, you know, inclusion and representation, BIPOC, which came about this year. Do the existence of these words kind of amplify the fact that there is a difference? Like, should we even be talking in that manner? I mean, there is that thought process out there where people feel that way. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Because on one side, you kind of need it. On the other side, but like, you know, are we not just kind of putting ourselves back into that same box of saying that we are different talk to me about your thoughts around that.
Well, I think, look, nobody wants to be labeled. Nobody wants to feel like they're one part. We are multidimensional, layered people. I don't ever want to be described as an Indian American actress. I would never want that.
Okay.
That being said, and I don't allow that to happen. I'm an actress, period. And if anything, I'm an American actress.
Yes. Yes.
That being said, I hope, like, it's like the same thing as having, networks that deal with like BET, or you have a South Asian festival, or you have a festival that spotlights Black films. Until we are at a point where we have equal representation and equal seats at the table, you will need those things. I hope we get to a point where we don't need any of that stuff. I hope that we don't need a specific magazine or a network or a thing that highlights these voices in the way that they do, because they are equally giving equal opportunity and access to all the others. But until that happens, we absolutely need it.
Right.
This is the way, and people want that. And the thing that's interesting to me, especially in Hollywood, is that they have seen time and time again that people of color bring in tickets. I used to say back when I started, at the end of the day, the only color they care about is green and how much money they can make. So now we've proven it. So now I think they're realizing there is money to be made. So hopefully they will realize that it's in their best interest to make sure to, again, reflect the world as it is.
Absolutely.
In stories.
Absolutely. And, at the end of the day, it's funny that you say this, because during TIFF time here in Toronto, the largest coming out to support a movie is always when a Bollywood film comes from India.
Interesting.
It's like, it is incredible. And TIFF always says this. They always know that they need to have a Bollywood premiere of some sort during TIFF, because it brings out the hordes of Desis that come out to support their own. And, and that's the thing. In our culture, we are taught to support the collective. That is a part of the DNA of who we are. So it's a good business decision for anyone out there that's putting any product or service together to include, cultural groups in whatever it is they're doing, because that was a big thing that I had as a problem when I first came out with the magazine all those years ago, Sheetal, was, people wouldn't give us advertising because, these big companies like P&G, et cetera, this is, but we get your people.
Yes.
We get your people through, Vogue and Elle, etc. So to me, it was so insulting, because you don't get us because you're not saying that we exist. You don't get us. You know what I mean? So it's interesting.
It's the same thing. It's the same thing, when Gloria Steinem created Ms. Magazine. They were like, the women will read our stuff. And that magazine was like a revolution, in how many people wanted it. Again, 100%. They did that with women for the longest of times. Yeah. They didn't think we needed. We have things we want to talk about.
Absolutely.
with us being, kind of driving the conversations.
Absolutely. And we'll continue to do that, Sheetal. I want to ask you something. Why is it important for you, for anyone that's come in later on in the conversation as we get ready to wrap up, why is it important for you to continue on with this series of children's books that you are now into C in the alphabet?
Well, I think, again, realizing that there isn't a series that centers a South Asian hero is huge. And so that's important. I didn't realize how important it was when I had started out on my journey. It's really important for everybody to feel like they can be the hero of their own story versus the object of someone else's, or a side character in somebody else's.
Say that again, girlfriend. That is so powerful.
Being the hero of your own story versus being an object or a supporting character in somebody else's.
Oh my gosh.
Our stories matter. Your stories matter. Everybody's story. There's no such thing as, I remember some of the things that people would say when you would pitch things back in the day, and still people are guilty of it. Well, they'll say, it's a niche. It's a small project. And I'm like, well, I don't feel that way. I don't feel like my story is small at all.
Right.
I feel like it's a story that a lot of people want to see.
Absolutely.
And there's universality in the specific. And that is really what, and I have proven that with this book. It's done extremely well. Absolutely. And I'm not the only one. There's a lot of other media out there that has shown what people want. And
Right.
so I think we just have to keep at it. I think more and more people, I hope, will continue to put their stories out there. People want it. And
Yes.
so, just do you, like I said, own what you can do and do it. Get it out there. We need it. We need your voice.
Absolutely. And so the pre-orders are going on right now, folks. Again, Sheetal, just let people know where they need to go. What are
Yes.
some of these specials that you have going on? Let's wrap up so that people know that that's what they need to go and do right now, because we need to support, getting out and amplifying our stories, especially to the younger generation, because they're our future.
Yes, so you can go to alwaysanjali.com and you can pre-order Bravo Anjali. You can order Always Anjali from there. It's a great present. There's also a discount on the site when you're linked to it for the pre-orders of Bravo Anjali if you get 10 or more books, which is a great discount. You get a great discount, and it's great because you can gift it to schools, classes, friends.
Right.
It's a great thing to remember. Get it for your schools, get it for your kids' libraries, get it for the libraries in your town. Again, these are little things we can do to make sure, because what people don't realize is that there's limited budgets, and these people who are deciding what books they buy are from the old guard mostly. And the librarians want more. So if someone was to donate it or put it in there, they're so appreciative. Everyone is so like, oh, thank you, because I don't have the funds, or I don't have this, or, so just, I would love if you could consider that. One for you, one for a friend, one for a school, or library is great. And yes, and if you pre-order Bravo Anjali by Monday, the 23rd, you will get a signed book plate, you will get pins, you will get stickers along with your book signed by me. And please do, and spread the word. Always Anjali is available right now. It's a great holiday present. Couldn't be more timely with everything going on. And now with the runoff going on in Georgia, Purdue will be in the news quite a bit. And I think this conversation is something we should all be having more than ever.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, sweetheart. I mean, what a wealth of knowledge. What a lot of information for people to, get themselves on board with why it's important to support stories of everyone in the communities that we, grow up in and that we participate in. Get out there, guys.
Yes.
Go and support. This is important. It's the holiday season. Every single child out there needs this book. Thank you so much for joining us, Sheetal.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I adore you. Thank you so much. And you're coming back on when you're getting ready to make that next announcement, right, girlfriend?
Yes, we will. For sure. You're going to like it. You're going to be very excited.
I am already excited. Thank you so much, sweetheart. And thank you to our communities at Facebook and on Instagram. And we'll see you again. Thanks.
Yes. Take care. Bye-bye.